I never thought I'd be the one to take down Karen Matthews, the notorious Homeowners Association president of Whispering Pines. For 3 years, she'd ruled our neighborhood with an iron fist and a clipboard, measuring grass height to the quarter, inch, and sending violation notices if your mailbox was a shade darker than the approved eggshell number 7. But even I couldn't have predicted how far she would go or how spectacularly she would fall. It all started when my sister and her family moved in with me temporarily while their house was being renovated. My 11-year-old nephew Ethan has cerebral palsy and uses a wheelchair. He's the brightest, most determined kid you'll ever meet. The first day they arrived, we installed a small removable aluminum ramp over the 2 steps leading to my front door. Nothing permanent, nothing intrusive. Just a practical solution so Ethan could come and go independently. The doorbell rang at 7:30 the next morning. There stood Karen, her platinum blonde bob perfectly styled despite the early hour, designer sunglasses perched on her head, and that infamous clipboard clutched to her chest. "Good morning," she said with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I noticed you've made an unauthorized modification to your property." I blinked, still half asleep. "Excuse me, the ramp," she said, pointing with a French, manicured finger. "It's not on the approved structures list for front entrances. Article 7, Section 12 of the HOA bylaws clearly states that all exterior modifications must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee. You'll need to remove it immediately." I took a deep breath. "Karen, it's a temporary ramp for my nephew, who uses a wheelchair. He's staying with me for a few weeks." She consulted her clipboard. "I don't see any approved accommodation requests in your file. You'll need to submit Form 34B with architectural drawings, material samples, and a physician's statement. The committee meets on the first Tuesday of next month." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "My nephew needs to be able to enter and exit my house now, not in a month. This is a reasonable accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act." Karen's eyes narrowed. "The HOA predates ADA requirements, and our bylaws take precedence. You have 48 hours to remove the unauthorized structure, or you'll be fined $50 per day." She spun on her heel and marched down my walkway, leaving me speechless in the doorway. I spent that day researching. It turns out Karen was dead wrong. The ADA absolutely applied to HOA regardless of when they were established. I printed out the relevant legal documents and dropped them in her mailbox with a polite note explaining that the ramp would stay until my nephew left, and that I'd be happy to discuss this further if she had concerns. The next day, I came home from work to find a violation notice taped to my door with a $200 fine for nuisance correspondence in a non-approved mailbox receptacle. Apparently, placing documents in Karen's mailbox violated another bylaw. I had to laugh at the absurdity, but my amusement was short-lived. The following Saturday morning, I was making breakfast when Ethan wheeled into the kitchen, tears streaming down his face. "Uncle James, someone took my ramp," he said, his voice shaking. "I can't get outside to play with the other kids." I rushed to the front door. The ramp was gone. Not just moved, completely gone. Through the window, I could see neighborhood kids playing street hockey. Ethan had been looking forward to watching them all week. My blood boiled. I knew exactly who was responsible. I carried Ethan down the steps and set him up in a spot where he could watch the game, then marched straight to Karen's house. Her pristine white colonial with its perfectly manicured hedges sat at the end of the cul-de-sac, act like a fortress. I rang the doorbell 3 times before she answered, wearing a tennis outfit, though I'd never once seen her play. "Where's the ramp?" I demanded, skipping any pretense of pleasantry. Karen crossed her arms. "I had it removed as per Section 23 of the bylaws regarding unauthorized structures and HOA remediation rights. You were given notice. That ramp is my property. You stole it. Where is it?" I was struggling to keep my voice level. She sighed dramatically, as if I were a troublesome child. "The non-compliant item has been disposed of. If you continue with this hostile attitude, I'll have to report you for creating a disruptive environment. which carries a $500 fine. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Karen, that ramp cost over $800. More importantly, my disabled nephew now can't leave the house without being carried. That's not just mean it's illegal. I'm simply enforcing the bylaws that you agreed to when you moved here, she said with a smug smile. Perhaps next time you'll follow proper channels before making unauthorized changes to the exterior aesthetic of our community. I took a step back, realizing I needed to handle this differently. You know what? You're right. I should have followed proper channels, and now I will. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of her smile for evidence. Her smug expression faltered. What do you think you're doing? Documenting the person who committed theft and violated federal disability law. The police will appreciate having a clear image. I turned and walked away as she sputtered behind me. You can't prove anything, and the police don't care about HOA matters, she shouted, but I wasn't going to the local police, not yet. I went straight home and called an attorney who specialized in ADA compliance issues. After explaining the situation, he was practically salivating. This is open and shut, he said. Destruction of medical equipment, willful ADA violation, theft of property worth over $500. She's looking at serious consequences. The following Monday, I took the day off work. At 9:00 a.m. sharp, two things happened simultaneously. Karen received a certified letter from my attorney outlining the multiple federal laws she had violated, and I filed a formal police report about the theft and destruction of medical equipment. By noon, 3 other families in the neighborhood had come forward with their own stories of Karen's discriminatory enforcement of HOA rules against residents with disabilities or medical needs. Karen's response was to call an emergency HOA meeting for that evening. I attended, along with nearly every homeowner in the neighborhood. A stark contrast to the usual empty meetings where Karen and her 2 cronies made decisions unopposed. She stood at the podium, red-faced, clutching a stack of bylaws. We have a resident who is trying to circumvent our established procedures, she began, glaring in my direction. If we allow one unauthorized ramp, next thing you know, people will be painting their houses purple and parking commercial vehicles in driveways. I waited for her to finish, then raised my hand. When she reluctantly acknowledged me, I stood up. I'd like to address the board about the theft and destruction of medical equipment from my property, which constitutes a federal crime. Karen's face went from red to purple. That's a lie. The HOA has remediation rights. I held up my phone. I have security camera footage showing you and the association's maintenance person removing the ramp at 6:15 a.m. on Saturday. I didn't actually, but the maintenance person's face told me everything I needed to know. I also have the receipt for the ramp, the ADA documentation establishing its necessity, and statements from 3 medical professionals about the impact of its removal on my nephew's ability to access basic needs. The room went completely silent. Karen looked around for support but found none. Even her loyal board members were suddenly fascinated by their shoes. Furthermore, I continued, I've spoken with the district attorney's office about pressing charges for theft over $500, destruction of medical equipment, conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of authority, and violation of the Fair Housing Act. A woman in the back stood up. My son has autism, and Karen fined me for having a swing in my backyard that helps with his sensory needs. She called it an unsightly play structure. An elderly man raised his hand. She made me remove the handrail I installed next to my garden steps after my hip replacement. Suddenly, the floodgates opened. One by one, neighbors shared their experiences of Karen's tyrannical rule, each more outrageous than the last. Karen tried repeatedly to gavel the meeting to order, but no one was listening anymore. The maintenance person, looking pale, approached the microphone. For the record, Ms. Matthews instructed me to take the ramp to the landfill, specifically so it couldn't be recovered. He turned to me. I had no idea this was for a disabled child. She told me it was abandoned junk someone had dumped. 2 days later, I was in my front yard installing a new, sturdier ramp when a police cruiser pulled up. 2 officers approached Karen's house and knocked on the door. I couldn't hear what was said, but I watched as they escorted her to the patrol car, not in handcuffs, but clearly under direction. The neighbors gathered on their lawns, watching in silent amazement as the Queen of Whispering Pines was dethroned. Later that day, I received a call from the district attorney's office. Karen had been charged with theft, destruction of medical equipment, and multiple ADA violations. Because she had used her position as HOA president to commit these acts, the charges were enhanced. She was facing up to 3 years in prison and fines of over $100,000. The DA was offering a plea deal: 6 months of house arrest, 5 years probation, full restitution for the ramp plus damages, 200 hours of community service working with disabled individuals, and a permanent prohibition from serving on any HOA board. That evening, as I helped Ethan up our new ramp, we saw Karen returning home. Her perfect hair was disheveled, her designer outfit replaced by a rumpled pantsuit. When she saw us looking, her face contorted with rage and humiliation. She slammed her car door and stomped inside, only to emerge moments later with a "for sale" sign, which she jammed into her perfectly manicured lawn with such force I thought she might break the stake. In that moment, as she looked up and met my eyes across the street, I saw something I never expected: fear. Karen Matthews, who had terrorized our neighborhood with petty power and arbitrary rules, had finally discovered that real rules, actual laws, applied to her too. And she was terrified.